At 4 o'clock in the morning on August 16, 2025, the calm skies above Melitopol split open. A single blast thundered through the occupied city, rattling windows miles away and throwing Russia's southern command into chaos. Witnesses described a fireball that seemed to swallow the horizon. In seconds, the silence of night turned into a roar that could be felt across the Zaporizhia front. Ukraine's defense intelligence quickly confirmed what many already feared. Something vital had gone up in flames. Reports spoke of destroyed stockpiles, shattered infrastructure, and soldiers caught in the inferno. This was no random strike, no accident in a warehouse. It was a deliberate, calculated blow against one of the most sensitive points in Russia's war machine. Why does it matter? Melitopol has long been a critical artery in the Kremlin's southern logistics. Analysts have warned that if that artery were ever cut, the consequences would reach far beyond the battlefield. Supplies of shells, rockets, and fuel that kept Russia's push alive in Zaporizhia and Crimea could suddenly stop. And when supply stops, the front line weakens. When the front line weakens, strategy collapses. The shock, however, is not just in the damage, it lies in the method. A stronghold that Moscow considered untouchable, wrapped in layers of defenses and electronic shields, was struck down in a way no one expected. Not by advanced aircraft, not by expensive missiles, by something smaller, cheaper, and far harder to stop. That raises an unsettling question. How can a device so modest deliver a blow so devastating? And if it can happen once, could it happen again, not only here, but across every corner of this war? Stay with us, because the answer reveals far more than a single explosion. Melitopol has always carried a weight far beyond its map coordinates. For Russia, the occupied city is not just another point on the southern front. It is the backbone of logistics, a hub that moves between 30 and 50% of all the shells, rockets, and missiles that fuel operations in Zaporizhia and along the corridor to Crimea. When a single city channels almost half of the ammunition needed for two of the most contested fronts of the war, its importance cannot be overstated. For months, analysts have described Melitopol as a warehouse for war, a place where convoys came and went without pause. From there, supplies were distributed to artillery units striking villages near the Zaporizhia line, and to Russian forces holding the land bridge that connects Crimea to the Donbas. In military terms, Melitopol was not simply storage. It was the heart of the supply chain that allowed Russian commanders to sustain the fight. The scale of this role is why the August strike drew such attention. Ukraine's defense intelligence, known as HUR, reported that the attack not only destroyed the depot itself, but also killed at least 6 Russian naval infantry soldiers stationed there. Alongside them was a unit from the Akhmat Vostok UAV detachment, a group specialized in drone operations. Their elimination mattered as much as the destruction of the stockpile. Removing trained personnel, particularly those with unmanned aerial vehicle expertise, reduced Russia's ability to track and respond to Ukrainian movements in the south. The reports also mentioned secondary detonations inside the compound, meaning that once the first explosion hit, the chain reaction consumed the remaining reserves. The impact reached deeper than lost munitions. According to Ukrainian officials, Russia had been preparing to use this very depot to stage a major offensive timed before an upcoming peace summit. The idea was simple: inflict heavy pressure on Ukrainian defenses and arrive at negotiations with stronger leverage. By losing the site, Moscow lost not only physical assets, but also its plan to change the balance at the table. Beyond troops and ammunition, the damage included hardware. Local intelligence indicated that at least 1 Russian fighter aircraft was destroyed in the blast, adding to financial losses already measured in the tens of millions of dollars. For a country already spending enormous sums to replace tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery pieces, The loss of another aircraft only deepened the economic strain. The symbolism of the event also matters. Moscow had long treated Melitopol as secure, guarded by layers of troops, surveillance, and logistics staff. Yet one strike was enough to dismantle that sense of safety. The image of a critical hub wiped out overnight exposed vulnerabilities that Russia preferred to hide. It suggested that even areas deep in occupied territory, previously thought untouchable, were within Ukraine's reach. For commanders on the ground, this forced a re-evaluation of how safe any stockpile truly is. For politicians in the Kremlin, it created a dilemma. Admit to the weakness and risk public doubt, or hide the truth and risk further losses without correction. This is why the attack on Melitopol stands out in the wider war. It was a deliberate blow aimed at a nerve center, one that carried both tactical weight and political consequences. Most of all, it shattered the assumption that Russia's logistics could not be touched. In modern warfare, supply is survival, and in Melitopol, that lifeline was severed. How did they do it? The ammunition depot in Melitopol was not left unguarded. Russian commanders treated the site as a fortress, surrounding it with multiple layers of protection. At the center of this shield was the Pantsir S-1, a short-range air defense system designed to fire both missiles and rapid-firing guns. Its role was to shoot down low-flying threats, including drones and cruise missiles. The system has radar capable of tracking targets in all weather, and Moscow has often presented it as proof that its critical facilities could not be touched. Alongside the Pantsir were older but still dangerous Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft guns, twin-barreled weapons known for unleashing dense bursts of fire against aircraft flying at low altitude. Completing the picture was the Borisogledsk II electronic warfare complex, a jamming system that floods the airwaves with interference to blind drones and sever their control links. On paper, this combination looked impressive. A modern missile launcher, classic anti-aircraft artillery, and electronic disruption created what Russia called a layered defense. The logic was simple. If one system missed, another would cover the gap, and if all else failed, jammers would deny control to any drone trying to approach. Moscow sold this as a shield no cheap device could penetrate. Commanders in the south reassured themselves that even if Ukraine tried to strike, the network would intercept the danger before it reached the warehouse. Yet history shows that no defense is perfect when confidence turns into complacency. The Ukraine's Defense Intelligence, or HUR, suggested that Russia placed too much faith in the technology and too little in the possibility of deception. The weakness was not in the hardware itself, but in the way it was used. Russian forces concentrated their eyes and firepower on obvious threats, expecting large drone swarms or missile barrages. But they were less prepared for a strike designed to distract them first and then slip past the net from another direction. Analysts note that the Pantsir S-1, though modern, has a limited magazine and high operating costs. Each missile costs tens of thousands of dollars, and radar crews can be overwhelmed by false targets. The Zu-23-2, effective in the 1970s, relies on visual tracking and quick reactions, making it less reliable against small drones flying low and fast. As for the Borisogledsk II, it can jam radio frequencies, but it cannot disrupt every form of guidance, especially systems that shift to fiber optic control or pre-programmed routes. In short, the shield was strong but not flexible. HUR understood this imbalance and built its strategy around it. The agency did not try to smash through Russia's defenses head-on. Instead, it looked for the cracks created by overconfidence. By exploiting the fact that Russian crews focused their attention in one direction, Ukraine created openings elsewhere. Decoy activity, false signals, and unexpected flight paths forced the Pantsir to waste ammunition on phantom targets, while the electronic warfare unit concentrated on blocking the wrong signals. Once the defenders were distracted, the real strike found room to maneuver. The strike on Melitopol was not spontaneous. It came from a 2-week plan by Ukraine's Defense Intelligence, or HUR, which treated the depot as a strategic target requiring layered preparation and precise execution. The first stage used surveillance from above. High-resolution images from Maxar satellites allowed analysts to track truck convoys, map loading ramps, and record the steady buildup of munitions. To confirm these findings, Ukraine deployed the Lelika 100 reconnaissance drone. With a 60-mile range, it collected electronic signals, monitored radio traffic, and revealed guard rotations, radar positions, and gaps in the defense ring. Equally vital was intelligence from the ground. Resistance networks inside Melitopol reported convoy arrivals, soldier movements, and unusual shipments. These reports confirmed that thousands of tons of ammunition were concentrated at the depot, and that Russia planned to use it as a launchpad for a larger offensive. With the intelligence picture complete, HUR turned to deception. False radio traffic suggested a Ukrainian offensive was coming near Kherson, 100 miles west. Russian commanders took the bait, shifting elite units, including naval infantry and Akhmat Vostok drone operators, into Melitopol. Believing they were reinforcing a safe staging area, they walked directly into the trap. Not everything worked as planned. Ukrainian teams tried to hack Russian security cameras but were blocked by cyber defenses. Instead of giving up, they switched to a direct Starlink link with partisan cells hiding nearby. This provided real-time updates on vehicle arrivals and guard changes, giving Kyiv the precision it needed to time the strike. The outcome was decisive. Russian troops and equipment were concentrated inside Melitopol just as the depot became most vulnerable. Believing they were securing the area against a threat elsewhere, they had unknowingly created the perfect target. What Moscow considered a fortress turned into a cage, and when the attack came, it consumed both the stockpile and the men assigned to protect it. The turning point of the Melitopol strike was the weapon Ukraine chose. Instead of cruise missiles or Western-supplied long-range systems, they sent in a small FPV drone, known locally as a Reboth hybrid. Costing about $500, it carried a 10-pound charge, enough to ignite everything inside once it hit. Flying just 130 feet above the ground, it skimmed low under radar and stayed invisible to Russian gunners. Its simplicity became its strength, because defenses tuned for larger aircraft could not lock onto something so small. To increase the odds, operators launched 5 more drones, each worth only $200. These were not meant to strike the target but to deceive Russian crews. Programmed to mimic the electronic signature of a swarm, they lit up the screens of the Panzer S-1 battery guarding the depot. The Russian team responded as trained, launching interceptors that cost tens of thousands each. Electronic warfare was the next hurdle. The Borisogledsk 2 complex began jamming the spectrum, trying to cut the drone's control link. Normally this would end the mission, but the Ukrainians had prepared. At the key moment, they switched guidance to a fiber optic cable spooled behind the drone. A beam of light running through glass cannot be jammed, so the drone pressed forward even while the airwaves were saturated. This adaptation exposed the gap between costly defenses and cheap innovation. Russia had invested millions in Pantsir launchers, Zu-23 guns, and electronic jammers, believing these layers made Melitopol untouchable. Ukraine spent less than $2,000 in total on 1 armed drone and 5 decoys, yet still broke through. The imbalance was stark. A fraction of the cost delivered a strike that Moscow's shield could not stop. The lesson is broader than money. It shows how modern battle favors agility over heavy investment. A cheap platform guided by smart tactics defeated a fortress once branded impenetrable. By turning limited resources into precise strikes, Ukraine forced Russia to question the value of its most expensive defenses. The Melitopol strike stands as proof that ingenuity can give modest tools the power to bring down a system built on billions. In today's wars, adaptability is not just an advantage, it can decide the outcome. The decisive moment came when the drone reached the depot's perimeter. Instead of hitting the walls, it struck a Russian truck parked at the front gate. The vehicle carried troops and equipment, and the blast ignited its fuel, turning it into the detonator for the stockpile inside. Within seconds, shells and rockets stored nearby caught fire, setting off a catastrophic chain reaction. What followed was not a single explosion but a rolling wave of destruction. Ukraine's defense intelligence confirmed the entire warehouse was destroyed, with secondary detonations echoing for several minutes. A unit of Russian naval infantry and the Akhmat Vostok UAV team stationed there were eliminated in the same strike. Witnesses described shockwaves spreading across the southern sector as rockets fired uncontrollably from their crates, creating the effect of a man-made volcano. Reports noted that the heat reached extreme levels, hot enough to melt steel, leaving behind a crater more than 30 meters deep. The devastation spread outward as nearby buildings collapsed and debris littered a wide radius. The occupiers dispatched 4 ambulances to the site. The consequences went beyond physical loss. Ukrainian intelligence said Moscow planned to use this depot to fuel a preemptive strike before a peace summit. Without the munitions, the operation collapsed before it could begin. The hub had supplied up to 10,000 Russian troops in Zaporizhia and Crimea. Its destruction forced Russia to reroute convoys, stretch reserves, and draw from depots farther east. Each added mile increased costs, delays, and exposure to further Ukrainian strikes. Analysts called it a sudden fracture in Russia's supply chain, one that could take weeks to repair. The cost ratio made the event remarkable. A single FPV drone worth only a few $100s destroyed an arsenal valued in the hundreds of millions. The strike also carried psychological weight. It proved Russian defenses could be penetrated and that prized stockpiles were vulnerable. For Moscow, it was a reminder that even deep in occupied territory, security could be shattered in minutes. Melitopol was not just another drone raid. It was a targeted blow against a nerve center, neutralizing elite personnel, erasing weeks of planning, and damaging Russia's logistics across the southern front. For Ukraine, it was both a battlefield victory and an information triumph, demonstrating that ingenuity and precision can make low-cost tools as effective as the most advanced missiles or aircraft. The strike on Melitopol tells a story in hard numbers. One $500 FPV drone destroyed a Russian depot, valued at nearly $500 million. 6 naval infantry soldiers and an elite UAV unit were wiped out in seconds. A crater more than 30 meters deep was carved into the ground, while secondary explosions raged for over 3 minutes. And with that single strike, up to 10,000 Russian troops across Zaporizhia and Crimea suddenly lost their main source of ammunition. These numbers underline a bigger truth. Modern war is not only a contest of billion-dollar arsenals, but also a race of ingenuity. Russia invested millions in Pantsir missiles, Zu-23 guns, and Borisogledsk jammers, yet none of them stopped a low-cost drone flying just 130 feet above the ground. Ukraine proved that intelligence, deception, and a bit of daring can turn small tools into strategic weapons. The losses for Moscow are clear: a strategic stockpile gone, elite forces eliminated, and the chance to enter a peace summit with leverage erased. For Kyiv, the payoff is equally obvious: a 1,000,000-to-1 return on investment and a global message that even the strongest fortress can fall to smart tactics. But the next move remains uncertain. Will Russia scatter its depots, double its air defenses, or strike back with similar low-cost weapons? The answers will decide whether Melitopol was a turning point or just one dramatic chapter. So what do you think? Is this the breakthrough Ukraine needed, or only a temporary win? Drop your opinion below, like this video, share it, and subscribe Military Force for more frontline analysis.